Awesome. Awesome. Welcome everyone to the Probiotic Masterclass. If we have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Kristen. I am the owner and founder of Whole Family Health Food Store. We are a brick and mortar health food store in Keswick, Ontario, proudly serving the community of Georgina and beyond at wholefamilyhealthfood.com. And I am so happy to be reunited with one of my favorite nutritionists in the biz. Christina is with me today. I get a lot of questions in the store around this topic, so I'm really excited to have this conversation and clear up some misinformation and some myths. But just before we jump into the juicy part of the conversation, Chris, can you just introduce yourself for anybody who may not know about your amazingness?
Thank you, Chris. I'm Christina. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist, and I'm with CanPrev Natural Health Products as well. I've been a nutritionist for 14 years, and we have been focusing on gut health as part of us as nutritionists. It's a very important part of our practice. So I'm very excited to have this conversation today because it's so foundational and integral to all the other things that we always talk about. So yeah, I'm excited to jump in today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. Absolutely. As nutritionists, that's such a key piece of our training is that everything starts in the gut, and you really can't build health if your gut is unwell. So probiotics is such a key piece of that, I think. And I see so much confusion when I'm chatting with folks in the store around probiotics. So maybe we can just kick off the conversation with, like, what are they? What does it actually mean when we're throwing this buzzword around? Like, what are probiotics? How would we define those?
Yeah, I mean, we hear the term probiotic everywhere, right? It's in liquids, it's in our yogurt that we buy on TV. We know that certain foods are probiotic, but essentially what probiotics are the friendly, beneficial, good guy bacteria that reside within our GI tract, our gastrointestinal tract. And, within our bodies, we have these unique systems, these microbiome systems of bacteria, viruses, fungi. It's essentially like these little communities of microorganisms that, live, happily or unhappily together. And probiotics are the good guys in this equation. And they really work to keep a healthy balance because it is okay to have bad bacteria and fungus and different viruses. These things naturally occur within our body, but having probiotics through diet and supplementation is really important to ensure that we keep that balance of these systems. We have trillions of bacteria and microorganisms and biomes within our body, trillions. And that's more bacteria than we have cells in our body. So when you look at the importance of keeping this bacteria in check, probiotics really come into play here. And so we often hear of lactobacillus or bifidum bacterium, and those are sort of two species of probiotics that you'll find in high quantity within our GI tract. Lactobacillus typically kind of resides within the smaller intestine, and then the bifidum bacteria typically resides within the larger intestine. And so, there are different probiotics that sort of function in different areas within our body. But ultimately, the goal of a probiotic is to work as that friendly bacteria to keep our body in balance. And there are so many roles that it plays when we talk about, how it can benefit our health.
Yeah, so that sort of rolls into my next question, actually. Like, if probiotics are the good bacteria and their sort of key role is to keep things in balance, how does that play out in other aspects of our health, even maybe beyond digestion? Like, are there other areas of our health that we want to be looking at where we might be getting helped, by good bacteria, or conversely, hurt if there's too much bad bacteria?
Yeah, that's a great question because, as you mentioned, we often think of probiotics as just a digestive thing. It's like when you're constipated or you have diarrhea or gas, bloating, distension, pain in your stomach, we think of probiotic and we think, okay, we need that probiotic to support our digestional health, but it's so much more than that. The health of our gut affects our entire body. When we're looking, number one, from a health and mood perspective, we know that there is a massive gut-brain connection within our body. So aside from all of the nerves that are running from our brain to our digestive system, there's also a ton of bacteria that speak to one another. And so we have to make sure anytime we're focusing on mood, memory, brain fogginess, sleep patterns, if you're having concerns with any of those things, that could be a sign that the bacteria is out of balance within our digestive system, because they are so closely connected and communicate so well. Another thing that we often need to look at when we're talking about probiotics is our immune system. So when you actually look at the fact that 70% of our immune system is located within our gut, within our intestinal tract, we know that if you are someone who is often fighting colds and flus and infections, that could be a sign that there's something off balance within the digestive system, and that the probiotics would be something that you'd want to look into. So from an immune standpoint, they're huge, very important. So, we're looking at gut, we're looking at mood, we're looking at immune, but we also can look at things like our skin. So beneficial to acne, rosacea, eczema, psoriasis. Anytime you've got this underlying skin issue, we often think, okay, let's go topically. Let's, or collagen. Collagen's great for the skin, and those are great, but the skin being our largest organ in our human body, usually it's the last sort of vessel for things to pop up and show that there's something underlying within our gut that is off balance. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different things, even from a cholesterol perspective. Keeping your probiotics in check can ensure that you lower your LDL, your bad cholesterol, heart health, all of the, really, like, it's integral for our entire body to have an optimally functioning GI tract and digestive system. There's just so many benefits that you can reap from that.
I'm getting that. I'm getting I'm getting the vibe that it goes way beyond the digestive issues. That they're, it's very, very far reaching if that good to bad bacteria ratio goes off. So lots and lots of ways that probiotics can help us. How would I know if I am, someone who doesn't have a particular amount of expertise in this area? How would I know that it's a good time to supplement versus just looking at like food sources?
Yeah. So it's very personal and indicative of what your natural health or your health is at the moment. And so typically speaking, like when we circle back to sort of gut health, right? Like if you're somebody who that there's potential for yeast overgrowth. Maybe you're experiencing oral thrush or, yeast infections or skin concerns where there's a yeast rashes. If you're somebody who has H. pylori, which is, an overgrowth of really harmful bad bacteria that can reside within the stomach, Crohn's, colitis. When you have sort of definitive concerns that are underlying, that would be something to look at absolutely getting a probiotic, and maybe something of a larger, higher strain probiotic. Definitely important to manage things like that. And when you have something like H. pylori or overgrowth of yeast, just food alone might not be enough to get you through that initial. Maybe over time, once it's balanced, because obviously as nutritionists, we want to go food first and diet first, but there is a time and place where additional probiotic supplementation makes a lot of sense. Again, if you are constantly having frequent colds and flus and infections, maybe something just through food just isn't enough to get you through that period. Maybe for fall and winter season, you feel it's important to stay on a probiotic where fresh fruits and vegetables are maybe not as abundant as they are in the summer, or just more, expensive to be adding into the diet. So people tend to cut back a little bit on things that are really important. Maybe that's when a supplement can come in handy during those winter months when naturally there's going to be more viruses and bacteria circulating. So you want to ensure that things are boosted up. Maybe it's just a maintenance. If you feel occasional, belching or burping or gas or bloating or constipation, maybe the transit time in your digestive is off. If you're not having a bowel movement every day, that is first and foremost an indicator that something needs to be adjusted within your digestive system. It's important for, typically we should be having one bowel movement per meal. I don't know many people who have that, but not that, I'm asking everybody I meet, but it's, it's a conversation that comes up in our community. But
you warned everybody. If you meet
I warned.
She's going to ask you how many times a day you poop.
We're going to talk about it. And, so we know that you want to be having at least a nice, healthy bowel movement, not, and there is such a thing as a healthy bowel movement. It's not runny, we want bulk. We want it to be easy. If you're not experiencing that, then we have to talk about what's going on in the gut. Do you need additional probiotics? Do you need prebiotics, which are the food essentially for probiotics to help them thrive and to help that sort of colony of healthy bacteria grow and flourish? And you get that through things like fiber. Acacia fiber is a really great prebiotic. So, there are little things within your daily life that you can look at and say, okay, like maybe I'm feeling pretty good, but do I need just a little something to get me to the next level? If you're under a lot of stress, naturally, that is going to severely deplete the healthy bacteria in your gut. So let's say you have a perfect diet. Let's say that you're doing everything right. And, there's no yeast, there's no concern for bacteria. Your immune system is in check, but you're going through a period where you are under a lot of stress.
So pretty much all of us for the last 2 years.
Right. Right. And so actually, when you look at the correlation, and I'm not sure if you're seeing this, Chris, as a nutritionist as well, but when you look at the correlation over the past 2 years and the intense stress that everyone's been put out of, how much more yeast and candida and constipation are you seeing? Like,
much.
Right. It's, and a part of that is being at home, and we all made sourdough bread, and there was a lot of stuff that we were doing, and, your dietary habits changed slightly, but the stress that was added on can really affect your gut health. And so even if digestively you're doing it all right, you're juicing every day, everything's great, but you're under a lot of stress, that might be something to look at, maybe like a nice mild probiotic, just to ensure that things keep balanced, because we always want to work on prevention. We don't want to wait for things to crash, but that's what we all do, is we push, and then once it crashes, we're like, how to fix it. So this is a great preventative tool to say, how do we keep things balanced and flourished, so that when we reach these stressful points or we reach cold and flu season, we're prepared.
What I'm also hearing from you, Chris, is that probiotics are a tool that we can bring in and take out, depending on what's happening in our health status, what's happening in our life and our mood and our stress. And so it's not a case of, well, once you go on probiotics, you need to stay on them forever. That they're very fluid and that they can be used and changed and adjusted, depending on what's going on with our own health picture. Would you say that I've got that part right?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with you. It's not a forever thing. You don't take one probiotic and intend to stay on that strain and that particular probiotic forever, because we're ever changing. Our body is ever changing. We're constantly adapting. We have periods of time where our body is in a great place and we don't need that additional supplementation. And then there are times where we need a boost. And so probiotics can inoculate the bowels quite quickly. Like I always suggest, for example, if you've been on an antibiotic, right? Like if you've been on an antibiotic because you've had a bacteria or something in your body that could cause some serious damage and you want to get those little critters out of there, that's great. You need that. However, in the process of killing all the bad bacteria, you're killing all of the good bacteria. So, that would be a good idea to re-inoculate the bowel for 3 months on a probiotic. After that, if you're feeling good, can you come off? Of course, you can come off. That's completely up to you. You can wean off of it. But, there's a time and place, and maybe you want to focus on probiotics during cold and flu season, but then in the summer, you don't really need anything. Maybe, it's the holiday season and you've indulged a lot in different sugary treats or alcohol. Those are sort of the moments where you decide, is this something I need right now? What's going on in my health and my surroundings? Are you a smoker? If you're a smoker, that should be something that maybe you do want to stay continuously on a probiotic, because there's a lot of damage going on in the gut at that point. So you definitely want to have something to try to counteract that. But absolutely, certainly it's fluid. It goes with, your lifestyle, what's happening, working with your health practitioners to see what you're working against. And then you can switch it up to different strains that are going to support different areas of the body or different concerns.
Awesome. Awesome. There's a lot of different formulations out there. I know I can just speak to, even what our shelf looks like. There's lots of options in the probiotic category. So if I have gotten to the place where I feel like, okay, I'm listening to everything you say, there's definitely some factors at play here, and maybe even some symptoms that are nudging me in the direction of like, yes, this sounds like it's a good idea for me. How do people navigate that overwhelming selection that they would find when they walk into, the drugstore, the health food store? There's a lot of options. So do you have any tips for people? I mean, aside from talk to your favorite local health food store nutritionist, but beyond that, if they're trying to navigate the minefield by themselves, what would be some tips that you have?
Yeah, there's a lot on the shelf. Probiotics is a very large space. It can be slightly overwhelming. And sometimes, we think we live in this culture sometimes where we think like more is better, right? Like the more strains, the better, the higher dose, the better, the higher potency, the better. And so, there is something to be said about when you're shopping, really being mindful about why did you walk in there? Number one, what was your concern? What were you trying to achieve by purchasing a probiotic? Was it because you're constipated and you really need relief from your constipation or from diarrhea? Is it because you're sick, you're feeling sick all the time and really run down? Once you kind of establish why you're there and what you're trying to, really work on, every strain has a purpose. And when you're purchasing or buying a probiotic and looking at, like, we can talk about CanPrev, for instance, right? When we're looking at the CanPrev probiotic, we have a probiotic for bowel transit, which is for constipation, diarrhea. We have an immune probiotic. We have an IBS probiotic. These are not just marketed to be that way. These are actually specific strains that are clinically studied in trials together and actually monitoring, how these groups of people did better and improved their symptoms in these clinical trials. And through these clinical trials with these exact strains within these products, we're able to say you will find relief with constipation, you will find relief with your IBS. And so they're not a lot of strains. Most of the time you're going to see under 5 billion or 10 billion on these specified strains, because that's all you need. That's all the research says that you need to actually get to where you're going. However, if you're someone who's like, I kind of need everything in the kitchen sink, like I just feel like I need a complete reboot, a complete renoculation. You've had something like Crohn's, colitis, you've had H. pylori, you've had an antibiotic. Maybe you want to go with something that has a larger variety of strains, higher potency, not forever, just for a few months to kind of get you into that. And then you can wean off and see how you feel. And if you feel amazing on that, you stay on that. But if you feel like, why do you need to pay for 50 billion strains or 50 billion bacteria if really there's just one thing that really needs to get you to the next level, right? So it's a really personal decision on what you're feeling, but look at the research, look at what's clinically studied for what you need. And again, that comes into walking to a health food store where you have somebody who's educated on that can walk you through that.
Yeah, it's one thing that I love about the Canadian supplement space specifically. And, I know there's a lot of products available online from international suppliers, but we have such strict regulations in Canada, which some people don't like. And I understand that, but it just means that when there is a health claim on a box in a Canadian retailer, there has to be research behind it. Health Canada requires that. And I, like, as someone who is serving the public and asking people in my store to like spend their money on these things, I really appreciate that there is that evidence behind them, because it gives me so much more confidence that I'm going to be able to get results for my clients. So, that's something I think, to your point, just really helps consumers in the Canadian supplement space, not so much internationally. Like if you're getting products from other regions, they have very different rules and regulations, not very many.
Yeah.
And so people can pretty much say whatever they want on a box, and there doesn't have to be any evidence to back it up. But we're so fortunate in the Canadian space that it's the industry is very strictly regulated here. So that's really good advice, to just start with the box, start with the label, and see if what they're claiming matches up with your health goals, because we are fortunate here that we can rely on that information, which not everybody in all different places in the world can. So that's awesome. I've got one last question for you from my notes, and then just a little bit of a follow-up, and then I think we're good. But traditionally, like yourself, I've been in this space for a long time, and and certainly when I started practicing, the messaging was the probiotics in the fridge are the ones that you want. That was sort of the key indicator of a quality product. And now we're seeing more and more shelf stable options. What is your opinion or your thoughts on that? Should we be sticking to the fridge, or can we still be getting quality product on the shelf? And what's sort of happened there?
The answer to that is they're both great options. It's essentially the same thing in the capsule. So the difference between a probiotic that's been refrigerated versus a probiotic that is shelf stable is essentially, and like you mentioned, Health Canada has a lot of rules and regulations, which is great, because then we know as a consumer, you know what you're buying, and as a practitioner, you know what you're recommending. When you're selling a shelf-stable probiotic, essentially, if you have a 50 billion probiotic that you're selling to be shelf-stable and there's an expiry date on that product, you're guaranteeing that at time of expiry, that probiotic will still be 50 billion. We know that once a probiotic is manufactured and encapsulated, the probiotic will slowly die. And when it's in a warm environment, it will die at a faster rate than when it's in a cooler environment. So these probiotics that you see on the shelf are basically, there's overage added to these products. When they're manufactured and encapsulated at a much higher dosage than 50 billion. So that as you account for any die in probiotic within, the 2 years expiry, you're still guaranteeing that at the last day of that product, you're getting 50 billion, which means that on the first day, you're probably getting slightly higher probiotics than you would be at the end. So you can always buy a shelf-stable probiotic and decide to put it in the fridge. But the difference is when you're buying a probiotic that is in the fridge and is not claimed for shelf stable, if you take it out of the fridge, you are not guaranteed that dosage at time of expiry. That's the main difference. There's no overage put into that product. So can you leave a probiotic out on the counter? Of course, but the difference is if it's actually manufactured to be shelf stable, you can guarantee what you're going to be getting. If it's not, you'll be getting less than what you purchased for. So in that instance, it's a great idea to keep that probiotic in the fridge. And there's other things involved in it too. The way that the probiotic is packaged, like you'll see within the CanPrev probiotics, they're actually packaged in blister packs. There's the way that they are actually patented and packaged in there actually prevents additional oxygen and water from entering in the probiotic and causing further die off. So it's a really great way to kind of keep the probiotic intact and keep the actual amount of probiotic to what it is on label.
Cool. Okay. So it's really has nothing to do with a quality issue at all. It's more of a potency issue, and that's accounted for by the manufacturer. So, so perfect. So, I always say to people when they ask me, should I have a shelf stable or a refrigerated? My question is always, if it's in the fridge, are you going to remember to take it?
Mm-hmm.
Because it can't help you if you forget all the time. And so, that if they already have a routine where they're going into their fridge for other things, then refrigerated, no problem. But if they have got a pile of vitamins that sit on their kitchen table or on their kitchen counter, and the probiotic is always missing because it's in the fridge and they keep forgetting to take it, then having a shelf-stable option can be so helpful because it can just go in the bundle with all the rest of them, and it's much easier to remember to take it and therefore get the benefits from it.
Absolutely. And I mean, the benefit of that too is on that point, like when you have a box with a blister pack, you can literally just pull out one of the blister packs and keep it in your purse or something, so that if you're always remembering, you can just literally pop on the go when you have your snack or something. So there's a convenience factor definitely to a shelf stable, because you can or cannot keep it in the fridge and use it literally whenever you want. So as long as it's not sitting in a hot car or like in the sun, you're pretty much good to go. So yeah, quality, not a concern. It's a convenience factor at the end of the day, and knowing that what you're going to get when that product's expired, because the last thing you want to do is just take a capsule with a placebo effect. You want to make sure there's healthy live bacteria in that capsule working to what you want it to work for.
Awesome. Awesome. We sort of touched on this, but we did get a question in the chat around the difference between prebiotics and probiotics. So I thought maybe we would just circle back to this quickly and do a recap. So prebiotics are the food that are feeding the probiotics, which is the good live bacteria that we want, if I've got that right.
Yes.
And we do sometimes see products that put them together. So they're putting the food in the capsule together with the good bacteria. And you did mention acacia fiber as a food source of a prebiotic. Any other dietary sources of prebiotic that you can think of?
Yeah. So you have, when we're dealing with prebiotics, and we can talk about food source from a prebiotic and probiotic standpoint, because prebiotics, when you have them together, that's sort of what we call a symbiotic product, right? So we want to make sure that we have all the elements to ensure that those probiotics are healthy, happy, and thriving, and feeding them prebiotics, which come in soluble types of fiber. So apple pectin or acacia fiber, which, you'll find either, if it's a symbiotic probiotic, you'll actually find them within the non-medicinal. So they're feeding the probiotics, such as like the CanPrev products. But from a food source, things like garlic, onions, asparagus, artichokes, burdock, those are food sources that are actually very high in prebiotics. So they will work to not only kill harmful bacteria within the gut, but also improve beneficial bacteria. The concern that right? It's great. I mean, garlic and onions are one of the greatest things that you can do. However, not everybody can tolerate garlic and onions, right? Not everybody can tolerate the high sulfur. They're high, what we call FODMAP. And so that makes them, very fermentable within the system and can sometimes cause gas and bloating. So if you're sensitive to some of the foods that are naturally prebiotics, it's a great idea to try something like a soluble fiber powder that can work to just keep your gut healthy and happy. But, lots of dark leafy greens, those are going to really help with the gut health. When we're looking at a probiotic standpoint, plain yogurt, fermented yogurt, miso, kimchi, kombucha, those are all things that are just going to nurture the health of the gut and feed the healthy bacteria.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been so chock full of great information. Thank you so much. And I'm getting some thank yous in the comments too. So thank you to anyone who joined us live. And I know that we'll have lots more people catch the replay as well, and they will benefit immensely from all of your wisdom. So thank you as always for being here. Thank you to everyone who joined us. I hope everyone has an amazing day, and I look forward to our next chat, because I always learn so much and enjoy our time together so much. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much again for having me, and to the great comments and those who made it today. Thank you so much.